Hello, everyone, and welcome to our multiplayer balance fireside chat. My name is John. I'm the community lead here at Relic Entertainment, and I'm joined by this fine fellow. You can introduce yourself.
Hello. I'm Jason. I'm senior gameplay dev on Company of Heroes 3.
So Jason, we're doing something a little bit different. I'm on the couch here. I'm on the couch
Your
here
first
with
time
you.
on the couch?
For one of these, yeah.
Okay.
I've been on this couch before.
Yeah.
But usually that's just like me talking to the camera by myself. So I'm glad I could get to do this here with you today.
It's exciting.
Yeah, so obviously, we released Opal Scorpion, our 2.1 update, and there's some lingering concerns around multiplayer balance, and I know we want to address some of that today. And in addition,
This is live.
This is live. I'm watching the chat. Is this
Yeah.
live? This is live.
Yeah.
There were some questions about hotfixes and potential changes, and I know we are planning to hotfix this week. We haven't locked in the day. It'll be soon.
Soon.
TM. I know we can maybe talk about some of those changes, some of those actual line items. But I know we've also gathered a bunch of questions from our players. We put out the call on Reddit and Discord and social for a bunch of questions. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through. I have them right here in front of me.
Yeah.
Can you hear that? Can you hear the tapping of the papers?
People don't believe we're live.
They don't believe we're live.
I can't really read that well.
Yeah.
Boo? Is that boo?
We voted for a black hat. I know, Kenny, you voted for a black hat, but the gray matched the shirt better. So unfortunately, gray hat today from your boy John. So should we just get into it?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's go.
First question from I Don't Think So Tim on Discord. Tim says, is there any insight that can be offered by the team in terms of what goes into the balance process? I think our expectations as players may be a little out of touch with what is feasible and what is a priority at times. So I was just curious if there were any broad strokes that could be given in terms of what the team is looking for in the feedback, how much impact that feedback has on decision making, whether any particular sources are weighted more highly than others, and what tools are available, what data is being looked at in order to identify problem areas. That's a big question.
That's not a question.
That's a quick little essay to get you going here.
Sure. We can break it out into a few things.
Sure.
But let's start with balance process. And I mean, part of what this live stream is meant to be is just kind of communicate better. It's like, hey, this is what we're looking at, what we're talking about. We haven't been as transparent as we wanted to. Kind of, it's not really on purpose, by the meaning.
It's just like it
just happens.
Right?
Right?
We have so many people on the team and so much time, and that is often taken up just with like getting the game done and getting things out the door, right?
But like in terms of process, right? We do major patches throughout the year, and we kind of approach it from a few angles, right? So we have the idea of maintenance balance, where we're looking at existing win rates, what people are currently using, and what people are not using, and essentially equalizing a lot of that. So if there's a major imbalance somewhere, that's something we target. If there's a lot of parts of the game that people don't use or people are overusing, so the main one we look at here are battle groups, but tech choices are a big part of this. This is another thing we try to equalize across patches. The next kind of thing is improvements. So for example, in 2.1, I would say 2.1 was a little bit more focused on improvements than usual. So we had the major breach improvements, we had the improvements to towing. A lot of this comes straight from us as balance designers, where we make these gameplay improvements of things that, people might not necessarily use. And it's not just because it's underpowered, right? It doesn't feel good or needs to be replaced. Like unit uniqueness is another big part of this, where like we take out abilities that we think don't quite fit, or if we made them actually really good, they would be toxic. So we would have to rip them out, and we have to design a completely new mechanic and put it in.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add there is I think like when it comes to things like breach and towing, we knew we wanted to get to those systems, right? Like
Yes.
we're the team is often painfully aware of like what are the issues with the game. It's just a matter of like when will we have the time dedicated to actually look at that system and investigate it and implement changes that we want, right?
Yeah. And like Darren and I, when we work on this kind of stuff, like there isn't that strong of a dividing line between like just balance work and gameplay work. We're really just the gameplay team for Co. So when we work on a lot of these things, the idea is to improve the feel of multiplayer in general, right? And in terms of going, I think the next part was kind of like priorities.
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
The most important thing is fun, but like breaking that down a little bit is like
What is fun, Jason?
because it's a competitive game, right? We want to make sure you have a good chance of victory with all of the mechanics that we give you, right? Having a mechanic that you might enjoy or a playstyle that you might enjoy, but just kind of is bad, isn't really fun. So it's very important for us to maintain that kind of balance. So we spend a lot of time there. Like I stare at battle group win rates quite a lot and their pick rates, for example, as well as just factions.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we also, for example, we do balance across modes. So we don't prioritize, say, 4v4 is the most important or 1v1 is the most important. We do aim for good balance at all of these modes. So with the current balance patch, one of the main issues that we're running into is that our changes really made access quite weak in team games. I think that's quite evident through the win rates, for example. Whereas, however, the thing that makes it a little difficult to change is that in 1v1, for example, one of the Axis factions, DAC, is actually overperforming. Not by a tremendous amount, but by an amount.
Mhm.
So the like, and in terms of like where we get a lot of our information from, stats is a big part. We're a very small team, and it's a very, very complex and big game. So we stare at a lot of stats, and then like we don't just look at stats and balance from there, right? We stats are often like the start point. So we're like, oh, there's a huge win rate disparity between these battle groups or these factions. That's where that what prompts us to go and look, right? So we're like, okay, this is where the problem. Then as designers, we go and look. What is the community saying? What is the closed community saying? And like, what do we do? Like,
Mhm.
we go and we play test, we experience it. And then that's kind of the synthesis process. All of this kind of comes together. There isn't like an exact of like 1, 2, 3. This is what we do. It's kind of like a mix of these.
Yeah, and again, I think like it's difficult to sort of say like, well, what feedback are we prioritizing because it's all important, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not like we're just watching Twitch streams or like we have a couple favorite content creators that we key into every day. Because again, it's feedback on Steam, on Discord, on social,
Yes.
on Reddit.
Yeah.
It's you mentioned the closed playtesting that we do. So
Hmm.
we do have a group of folks that we work with. Under NDA, we work with them fairly regularly. That group can change or adapt
Hmm.
depending on the needs of our testing. But as an example, we spoke to them last week, right? Or
Yeah.
we had a fairly in-depth playtest with them before we released 2.1. And again, we're not going to catch everything when we do that
No.
because it's a group of like 30 people or something. But it is another means of sort of trying to get early feedback so we can anticipate problems, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I guess we can go into the next question,
Hmm.
which is kind of similar to the first one. So this is an amalgamation from Texas Rose, Sergeant, and Union Man, all on Discord.
Hmm.
What prioritizes balanced decisions? Is it community
Mm.
feedback? Kind of what I just said. Is it like people sending bugs to the help portal? Is it internal stats and testing? And how are you balancing those things? What is your design mindset when doing so? Are you targeting a specific audience? Is it casual players? Is it hardcore players? Um, and how are you handling sort of the either balance versus alleviating player frustration?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
A
just
lot of good
just
ones
a
in
lot
there.
of questions in there. So just gonna throw that to you and,
um.
have you pick it
Yeah.
apart.
So in terms of where we get our feedback from, again, we use all of the different channels, though it frankly it is quite difficult to get through every single one
Mm,
quite thoroughly. But we usually use those as starting points as well as the stats. We kind of use the two together because, for example, if let's say Airborne for USF has 10% higher pick rate and win rate than everyone else, which is quite significant. Um, well, that doesn't really tell us anything of like why is it mostly picked, right?
yeah.
So, and it could be one or the other. We could get a lot of comments from our channels saying that Airborne's too strong, and then we could look in the stats and verify that. Or it's often like there's no start. It's almost chicken and egg.
Yeah.
But like we kind of look at both what people are saying. Why is it so strong, right? And then we don't end there, right? That's kind of like the high level location. Now we have to dive into it and be like, okay, we're going to spend some time playing with it. We're going to break it down. why is it strong? Why is it doing what it is? Then we consider options because, and this is the hard part, but like just knowing what is strong and weak, it's not quite simple to adjust it because often adjusting even like a stat on a unit will change its impact in several different ways, especially if you consider the different modes. So, for example, the way we're kind of interpreting what's happening to Axis in team games, why their win rate drop was much greater than in kind of like those smaller modes, 1v1, 2v2, is that a lot of the buffs we did to mortars in particular made using machine guns quite difficult. And also, the mortars are quite effective against light vehicles right now.
Right.
And early on in team games for Wehrmacht and DAC, the 250 and the MG42 are very important units. And it's much easier to run out mortars to cover a larger part of the lane, I guess, or the where you're fighting, which makes countering these units easier, which means these factions are just weaker, right? Whereas running out a mortar in a 1v1, for example, isn't nearly as strong because you need it for capturing. The units have more space on the map to kind of play away from the mortar or to find other units and stuff like that. So that's like an example of where like, yeah, we changed mortars, but then the impact of that change is completely different in every mode. So
follow up.
Yeah.
What are you doing to fix that?
So for the hotfix, I don't think we have the notes right now, but the change we're doing is mortars are going to take slightly longer. We're rolling back a little bit the speed we gave them, because while we want mortars to be as effective as a counter to, for example, machine guns and be really responsive, especially with smoke, they're a little too fast right now. The other change we're doing is mortars will be doing less than half the damage they currently do. I believe it's a 60% reduction.
Okay.
Don't quote me on the exact number, but it's more than half against light vehicles.
Just against light vehicles.
Or no, against vehicles.
Okay.
But generally, it was mostly against light vehicles. Like a barrage could kill like a 221 or something like that with a few direct hits. So we're toning this down because the purpose of the mortar is not to counter these units.
Okay, cool.
So yeah.
So before I get to the next question, I forgot to introduce our disembodied voice, my colleague Hannah.
Hi, hello.
So Hannah, while I'm thinking about it, can you add a chat message that says that the hotfix is coming later this week, and then can you pin that, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Man, doing this live is great.
Yes.
Question from Professional Money on Reddit.
Sure.
I summarized their question, so I apologize. Why do you do a few big patches every year versus doing regular, smaller patches? Do you have thoughts on that, or do you want me to answer that?
You can go ahead with that one.
So I think like that there's a few things involved there. The easy answer is just sort of scope and team size and the other existing or ongoing projects at the studio. So the Company of Heroes 3 team is only so big, and we only have so much time to focus our efforts. So I guess like the example I would be, or like the counter argument to like our current patch cadence, Jason, would be like, well, why don't you just put out a balance patch every 2 weeks? So you laugh, but I want you to explain why you don't put out a balance patch every 2 weeks.
And like, so the reason why I laugh is usually because the difficulty of a balance change is not often the implementation, like to execute it. So for example, making mortars have 5 more health. That's not the hard part. The hard part is gauging that impact. And it's usually not, or it's just very difficult for example, a team of Darren and I to figure out, okay, in 4v4, 3v3, and 1v1, what is the impact of the mortar change? For example, like the example I just talked about with mortars overly countering 250s or not just the 250, but like the flak Vierling and all the other light vehicles and like machine guns. And okay, and say we catch that and we figure out that exact impact, and then we have to then follow up that change with like another change of like, well, okay, this is the issue. Let's add an additional change. We then need to playtest that. Right. So that has almost no room to do within like 2-week cycles. If we did like that kind of rapid pace, we would be essentially putting out a lot of changes that we just can't validate ourselves. So there are some changes that make sense in that realm, so like bug fixes, for example. But often it's quite difficult to do good balance that way. Especially the other thing is when you change something, often it'll move the balance of all the other things, right? So for example, why the mortar is such a big thing is not just the mortar is like massively overperforming against everything. It's countering a set of units that's important. And like, okay, do we go and then buff those units or do we nerf the mortars, right? Did we do too much with the mortars? And this has an impact on how the game plays in general.
Yeah.
And none of this is really easy to, suss out in 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And like in general, I think we've had more success when we can incubate a change through like a long lifespan. And some of the times, and this is painful, but this is a part of game dev, is we go on this chain of like, hey, we made, I don't know, Riflemen sprint when they throw a grenade. And like we added that ability to the game. And we go through a whole patch cycle and we're like, wait, in the end, this is not good. This is not good for the game because, this makes them better against machine guns or whatever. So then we buff machine guns and now machine guns are really nasty against grenadiers. And then it's like, okay, this whole chain doesn't work. So we just rip it out and players never see it, but it's gone.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And I think, again, going back to sort of the scope / capacity side of things for the team is like, if we were to divert some of the team's efforts into releasing more, like, specifically multiplayer balance changes at like at a higher or a more frequent cadence, that would compromise some of the bigger picture stuff that we want to do. As an example, battle groups coming later this year, right?
Yes.
Like if I were to ask you today and say like, okay, balance changes every 2 to 3 weeks, are we getting battle groups at the end of the year?
Not for me. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of like another thing that we need to consider as a team as well, right? In terms of like, where are we focusing the team's time and energy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, Jason, your opinion only, what are the biggest multiplayer balance issues right now, and how do you plan to address them?
So
sorry, this is from Fretch and Winkin App on Discord and Reddit.
okay. So I think I touched on the big one. I do think our buffs to grenades and mortars really did hurt access in team games much more than we kind of intended to. But I think the other big one that the community's been very passionate about is the American 30 cal. So that one is receiving, I think, a long-awaited change where its RA is now being, or sorry, its DR, its damage reduction, is now being changed to being received accuracy. And I just want to give some thoughts on like why it took so long to make this change. The main reason why we resisted kind of this change was the identity or the purpose of the whole new American machine gun was to be the most durable, even against its counters.
Yep.
And we really wanted to pursue that length of like, yeah, offensively, it's not nowhere near as strong as all of the other machine guns, but it makes up for this with its increased durability. And this is something we wanted to preserve. And I think we're still trying to preserve. But the main thing that we wanted to do was that it was easier to use against mortars, artillery, grenades. So that's why it was so important to keep the DR on the unit. But I think over the lifespan that we've seen, this just creates so many different problems because you're making a machine gun that's just resistant to its counters, particularly in team games where the lower cone, for example, is much less impactful. And so we're just rolling in that change that'll go in the next hotfix where that machine gun will no longer have that change.
Is that the biggest multiplayer balance issue right now?
Top of front of mind, yeah. Okay. Probably something else could come up. I mean, there's so many different balance issues, especially if you zoom out and go more like high level. Like USF has a few issues. Like I still don't think we're fully done fixing the USF tech tree. For example, the selection between the different support centers. We've spent so much time making them more competitive with each other, but I can safely say that's not done. So there's still more work to be done there.
Okay. Next question from Union Man on Discord.
Sure.
How does the balance team handle balance versus alleviating player frustrations?
Yeah.
Even though the statistics might show a balanced interaction.
This is a good question, and this is a hard thing. Whoa. We're done with that, I guess. But so the challenge And I think this is where like the what kind of balance designer you are comes out quite a lot. But it really depends on kind of the disparity, I guess, between the stats and what player is saying. Usually it's very rare to have a situation where something's like perfectly balanced and people absolutely hate it. But there have been many examples of this happening before.
Yeah.
Um and I in general it's harder to say. Going down more specifically, there have been like a lot of unit abilities that we've noted that are like, if we made these stronger, people will just not like playing against them. And this goes a little bit up the realm of just balance into more like gameplay design of like, you need counterplay for mechanics, right? So something we've noted in our game is that people don't like insta-kill mechanics, right? So in the past, I would say there were quite a few things that will allow you to essentially guarantee a kill on an enemy unit. And we've removed them, or we haven't put them back into Co 3, even though they've been in Co 2 and Co 1. Some other things are like things that allow you to instantly retreat an enemy unit with no counterplay. There are ways to balance this because you could technically make, like, for example, if you had a 200 munition ability that was like instantly retreat an enemy infantry unit, that wouldn't be a very good ability. But it would still suck to play against because like you have no input of like, well, as long as he pays the money, my unit gets retreated.
Right. Yeah. There's no sort of player agency
Yeah.
there in terms of response.
So that would be an ability where there's no good balance because if it's weak, people would tolerate it because it's weak. But if it was good, then everyone would hate it because that mechanic would suck. So that's kind of an example. But yeah.
Cool. Hannah, before I move on, are there any questions that you're seeing in the chat that you want to address?
I'm seeing a lot of questions in chat. Um,
I barely even looked at chat because I've just been thinking. I stare at the room.
I should have been more prepared for this. I think there was a question actually if we are going to get time to address any questions from chat. Which fair point, because I know you have many questions
we
with
put the
you.
call out. But yeah, if there's anything that pops out, we can absolutely answer them.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come back to that.
What's the balance team's ELO? Don't answer that, Jason.
Dude, I wish I could play more games and show people on the internet what's up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, your competitive days are over, long behind you.
Oh.
Yeah, we can keep an eye out.
I used to be good. I used to be able to compete with some of the best players.
Jason, in my heart, you're still good. Okay?
Oh.
We'll invite Miguel back and we'll see if that holds true.
Yeah.
Okay, this is from Fancy Josh on Reddit. I'd love to have the devs explain their understanding of faction performance at different ELOs and game sizes, so that we as a community can have more constructive conversations on the topic. So how should factions be performing based on game mode or ELO?
That's an interesting question. I will say generally, we don't. So a lot of other games have the concept of like certain characters that are simpler, I guess, naturally become less effective as you go higher ranked. We don't really have that concept right now. Mostly we have 4 factions, and none of them are really built to be that much simpler than the others.
Yeah.
The Brits are meant to be kind of the more straightforward tech-wise than the other factions, but we've compensated that by like putting more mechanics or just not more difficult, but just its own kind of depth of play into that faction. So we do expect win rates to be equal across all modes and all factions.
Oh, what a dream!
I mean, historically, we've actually done. Oh, okay. I
we've
probably
been
shouldn't
close.
say that on stream.
We're close.
Yeah, we've done okay-ish overall, but yeah. Let's see. Are there any disparities that we expect? Not with factions. With battle groups, yes. There are some battle groups that we consider generally a little bit more niche than others. And what I mean by this is like, for example, Dax Subterfuge is probably a good example where it's a very specific kind of gameplay with the kind of the stealth mechanics. So we don't expect everyone to play that as much as the other ones. USF Special Operations is probably another example where went at parity level, because there's usually a difference between its strength and its popularity, for example, though there is a tie between those. Those are probably examples where we expect for example, Spec Ops to be a little bit less popular at lower level than the other battle groups, and Subterfuge in particular. That's probably the best example of something we expect to vary. But in general, we usually break the elo brackets of players into kind of three very broad sections of like the high end, the mid end, and then the low end. And we do actually make sure that the game is generally balanced at all levels. Though we it's difficult to get visibility into especially the lower bracket because there's a lot of noise there in terms of what creates good and bad win rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a follow-up, Husarius on Discord wants to know how we envision the optimal way to play each faction. He thinks that would remove a lot of user frustration and mystery.
That's an interesting question because
How do I play, Jason?
I mean, Code's a really simple game, right?
Yeah,
You just
that's
you
what
know,
I heard.
you just build Riflemen and you win.
Mhm.
I it's funny because I think my job, like one of the most important things as a balance designer, is to make sure that answer is as complicated as humanly possible.
Right.
When you play as any of the factions, we want to make sure you have as many different meaningful options available to you. Like not just like, every little thing, but for let's say USF, for example, going either into barracks or into weapons support center, that balance is really important. Now that's been very difficult to achieve because the moment one is slightly stronger than the other, players will flock to one side over the other. And also, it's not easy to fix all of the structural issues. Why are Riflemen weak are not the same question of like, why is WSC strong, right? The units, the counters to them are generally very different, the way the game plays. But yeah, if in some ways, the fact that I can't answer it would be a sign that I'm doing my job well.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
So before I get to a couple of other questions, I'm wondering if there's any other changes that are coming in this week's hot fix that you can kind of give us a bit of a preview on.
We don't have it on screen, so it's hard for me to remember all of them.
Cast back to all the meetings you had last week.
Well, I don't want to say any of the changes that we were going to do and then we cut, and
Okay.
that's a big part of it. So one is probably airdrop abilities. So a lot of people, I mean, they've always caused issues where allowed you to rush to strategic points on the map. We don't want to remove it altogether because I do think that's a meaningful fantasy of like what it means to play an airborne faction.
Yeah.
Right. The whole idea is to be behind or at the objective first. But we do note that at 0 second from the start of the game causes a lot of problems. It also means we have to gimp the units in some meaningful ways. So now that the machine gun is getting a tone down, what we're doing is that we're putting a cooldown, initial cooldown on paradrop units. So I believe the number we settled with was 30 seconds. Please don't fully quote me on that. But then what's happening is that the two paradrop abilities are getting slight buffs. So the machine gun cooldown will be reduced, or both of the abilities cooldowns will be reduced. And I believe the fall piles are going to get a cost reduction because part kind of costed into their ability to jump at the start of the game was extra cost. So now you will have a little bit more time to rush out and kind of stop your opponent from getting into that very important house or that location, but they're still going to have that leg up of like that map tempo from that ability.
Right. Okay. So I can no longer drop right at 0 seconds. I have to wait 30 seconds.
Yeah. And it also means that you don't have to be like super like instant with like lock the battle grip, lock the ability, and there you go. The cooldown will be based from the start of the match. It will not be from when you unlock the ability.
Yeah.
So if you unlock it 10 seconds late or 20 seconds late, it'll be the same.
Okay, that's good because I'm getting older, Jason. So I just don't have the APM that I used to. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. From Failed Cat on Reddit. Will the Wehrmacht or the British forces ever get access to Salvage? With the crushing Rex change, Rex are abundant and Salvage is such a nice feature to have. Any insights?
So, I can't definitively say yes. I will definitely say we are very much interested in doing so. We want to make it so that generally with a system like Salvage or Rex, for example, every faction has a meaningful interaction with it. If not, giving them Salvage some meaningful way to like deny or something like that I mean, we're talking about future content here, so nothing's locked down. I'm not being mysterious for the sake of being mysterious. I just don't really know.
Yeah,
Depending on how dev works.
Still thinking it through.
Yeah, because the impact of some of these changes would be really big, right? Especially putting it in the base faction, that's really scary because that means you always have this across all battle groups. If this was new battle group functionality or, I don't know, re-added onto a unit, I could see that likely happening. Players probably noticed we've over time made salvage more of a part of the game, especially in team games, especially with the last change where wrecks are no longer crushed. We want the map to be littered with kind of these wrecks that you actually care about because you can use them as cover. You can use them for salvage for resources or deny the enemy from doing these. That's very important for us.
Booby trapping Rex. I like that idea. Question from I can't read that name. Tunoman. Hannah, what does that say?
Sorry, the screen is a little far away.
I don't know my glasses.
Hard to read.
I'm struggling to see which question.
First time chat right above the ones that got auto-modded.
When will USF
get arty?
What's that?
Oh boy.
What's that username?
Autonomous.
Okay. So that's a question we see a lot, right?
Yes.
How come the U.S. forces doesn't have a mainline artillery piece and they're locked to battle groups? Yeah. I feel like we've talked about this before, but I just want you to. I'm just going to put you on the spot and make you answer it again.
We pretty much talked about this once a patch. Darren in particular, I will just straight up say, is a huge proponent of this. I've been very resistant for this for a few reasons. The main one is for gameplay variety. We do want to make sure that the strengths of each battle faction, there are some meaningful differences. So, for example, having most of the artillery that USF has doctrinally is quite creates a lot of problems for USF that are unique to that faction. Usually, for if you're playing Brits in particular, if you run into a bunker line, the easy answer is you can just shell it from afar with the artillery options that you have. USF doesn't have that liberty, which players can definitely see as a problem. But in some ways, that's important that when you play as one or the other factions, that you have different problems. Now, with that said, we are looking at making it so that it's much smoother, because there are a lot of times where you can just find yourself in just an unplayable position, and you just need an answer that you can't get access to. That's not good, and that's on us. So that's something we want to improve. But that might be artillery. I don't want to say that we're not doing it, but right now the idea is that we want to keep it doctrinally. The other thing that's been a thing is that in their base design, the ASC is supposed to serve the role as giving you organic strikes on targets, but the ASC has been notoriously difficult to do, mostly because it interacts, A, it's kind of like an off-map system in a base faction, but B, it also interacts with the AA system, which was very difficult to balance. Yeah. So for all those reasons, this is something we're looking at every patch, I guarantee you, but currently the answer is no.
I mean, looking at some of the early stuff that we're doing with battle groups for the ones in the fall, I think there's some interesting potential solutions for striking where you cannot. Anyways, that's all I'll say there. Dire Nazgul on Discord. I just summarized their question.
Okay.
What's up with Rangers? Obviously, Rangers can be a bit of a contentious unit.
Yes.
They feel strong. They feel like they can be overpowering. I know there's a huge cost sink for Rangers, which I think can be prohibitive, especially with upkeep. But I know potentially in larger game modes, maybe at sort of mid to lower elos, Rangers can feel a bit dominant. So kind of, again, we've talked about this on past videos and live streams, but I'm going to grill you again. What's up with Rangers?
Yeah, so Rangers is a really cool unit. It's designed in some ways. Oh, the story behind the design is hilarious, but I wish Miguel was here to help me say it. But the randomness, the gadget crates, the weapon crates that we have was a really crazy mechanic, and in some ways it still is. Inherent, I will say, making it less random or the randomness is an inherent part of the unit because it's one of the only units that can create weapons for anyone to use. Now, in practice, we haven't seen people really use it that much to buff other units, but the Ranger unit itself it has so many capabilities that most units don't have. And that was kind of the core design. We wanted to kind of make that authenticity real of like they were very special infantry in that sense. We did not want them to just play like any other elite infantry unit in the game. In some ways, they were our first and probably either our only super elite kind of unit where they're costed and they're built and they're that's why their upkeep is so high is they're a tier above all of the other infantry in the game. And this causes a whole ton of problems because to make the unit that good, we had to break a lot of rules. So, for example, the resistant suppression, which is generally something we don't do anymore, which causes a lot of problems because then countering them isn't that straightforward. But you kind of need them to be somewhat resistant to the counters, or else it defeats the point of kind of going into them. The Rangers have been really difficult for us to achieve. That's actually one of the other ones with the previous question of like, this is a unit that we see win rates higher at lower ends than at the higher end.
Yeah.
Generally, Rangers have not been that effective at higher elo. When we see infantry battle group do very well, it's often because of the howitzer being meta. But the Ranger unit itself has never been that popular or that strong in 1v1, which makes nerfing them in 4v4 quite difficult because there are times where they're quite strong in 4v4s. A lot of and we had that previous question of like, when do we change things because they're not fun rather than they're balanced?
Yeah.
That's the other thing because we do know a lot of people don't like the move on the move and shooting bazookas and kind of the on hit effects that they can apply with like the flamethrower and the other ones. So this one is difficult. And because it's been so difficult, no easy solution of like this is better has arisen. It's very easy to be like, well, we could just gimp Rangers, but that's not really ideal. And it's really easy to make Rangers different. It's really difficult to make Rangers better.
Right.
And that's kind of been the main reasons why they've kind of kept their current form. We are very aware of the issues that they have, but yeah, adjusting them has just been extremely difficult.
Okay.
So I ranted a bit.
No, that's fine. Now that we're talking about Rangers, we can go into some questions specifically about battle groups. So Texas Rose on Discord asks, do we have any plans to rebalance battle groups?
All the time. Okay. We do this every patch. I think 2.1 is probably one of the few patches where we've been very light on battle group rebalance. We generally focus quite heavily on battle group balance because that's one of the best ways to kind of drive variety in the game. They're the most organic variety system, so to speak. And in 2.2, we're definitely going to be taking a bigger look at battle groups in general because we're talking about the new pack and whatnot. So, but yeah, every patch we kind of, in terms of that original cycle that I started, mentioned at the start of like, we have the maintenance balance and then we have like gameplay improvements. Technically on our end, we kind of break that into another section where we look at general faction improvements and then battle group balance. They're very closely tied, so I kind of put them together in the original talk.
Yeah.
But we look very closely at battle group win rates. We look very closely at their pick rates. And also within the battle groups, what are people picking within them? And it's very important for us to drive like variety there. So we don't want a battle group over, we don't have an exact metric, but we generally want them to be fairly even. Some battle groups we're okay with being less popular, but like especially with the main ones, we want to be generally the same popularity. And especially in win rate, we do care a lot if one spikes, because that usually just means that battle group is overpowered.
And that kind of leads me to my next question from Wicked App on Reddit. I think you already mentioned this, but do we track which battle groups have a higher win rate?
Yes.
And can we share that data?
Yeah, no, like 100%. We track pick rates, the win rates, the pick rates within the battle groups. We also track in terms of like how often their mechanics are used. Though that information's harder to use.
Yeah, I imagine we track by game mode too, right?
Yes. Oh, definitely. By game mode, by elo, we have all of these filters.
Yeah,
it's a lot of data, and it's quite a lot to span over. But we definitely take it drives a lot of our decision making.
Yeah. Off the top of your head, do you have any fun facts about the battle group pick rates or win rates that you want to share?
There have been some battle groups that people have been saying are really weak that have generally done quite well. There have been times in the past Like it's weird because it's we don't have like a good way of showing the stats because it's so many different views, right? It's like by mode, by elo, by battle group pick, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have a good way of like showing that off. But there have been times where people really say like one battle group's really strong when sometimes they're actually below par. I think the best example is like British Indian infantry or Indian artillery,
Artillery,
sorry. That battle group was struggling for quite a few patches, but people still didn't. Well, I mean, that's a part of that we can attribute to people not liking to play against it, but it was under par for quite a while, and people still thought it was very strong.
Okay,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Another battle group question from Dark Sterling on Reddit. How happy are you with the exclusive choices in different battle groups? Are you planning buffs or changes for options that are seen as weak or very underpicked?
So this is a big part of what we look at when we do battle group balance. So this is something we do every patch. So you could say I'm always unhappy with it because we always want to make it better.
Yep.
We've also noticed that over time people will kind of fall into kind of pick orders where over time, even though we haven't changed anything, the pick rates of one will kind of gradually increase as people either figure out or kind of get comfortable with one of those choices. So it's very important for us to go and then change it. Um, Regarding the hotfix that we're talking about, one of the other changes was the fast production and I'm forgetting the name of the other one. But both of the abilities that reduce the build rate of your units, both of those are being nerfed from 75 to 50.
Okay.
Because we're noticing in both of those battle groups, they're kind of like must picks.
Yep.
So we're reducing that.
Okay, sounds good. Keep an eye on the chat. Keep an eye on the time because I have to run right at 11.
Sure.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here before we wrap up. Another one from Winkin' App on Reddit. I'm going to answer this one. Many players complain of map hacking or other cheaters. Do you have any sense of how often that really happens? So, what I will say is that the perception of cheating is always higher than the actual cases of cheating. For the type of game that we build and the type of engine that we use, it's very difficult to do something like, as an example, like make your units invincible versus me, or like give yourself more, munitions or something like that. Because any sort of change to the game data will often just like desync the game.
Yeah.
Like the game will just drop
It'll
for
just
everyone.
desync.
The most common thing that we'll see are things like fog of war reveal, mini map reveal, that
Map
kind of
hacks.
thing. Yeah, sort of like what we would, anecdotally just what we would call like map hacks. Those are fairly easy for us to detect. And what I will say there, because I don't want to get into too many specifics, is we regularly ban cheaters every couple weeks. Like the system just will review all the cases and then just get rid of them all.
Yeah.
The number is low. Like it's very, very low. Like whatever number you're thinking about, probably cut it by like 90%. I was looking at because I think it was Call of Duty put out a really interesting stat. They basically showed that 70% of reported cheat like just cheat reports. So like we're playing together, you don't like me or you think I do something that's sus and you report me for cheating through like the in-game system. So Call of Duty found 70% of those were inaccurate. That like in 70% of those cases, that's not what happened. Cheating did not occur. And from the reports that I've seen on our side, I think our number is probably slightly higher than that in terms of like, because like you were saying earlier, Ko is a very complex game. There are a ton of factors at play. There's a bajillion different units, a bajillion different abilities and interactions. There's fog of war. Players are interpreting things differently. Again, there's like the perception of players. There's skill level and understanding of the game and the mechanics as well. So in the moment, you can just be like, oh, that person's cheating.
Yeah.
Again, maybe you look at the replay, you review things, and you're kind of like, oh, something's still kind of sus here. But what I will say is the number is very, very low, and we deal with that like super regularly. Like I said, like every week or two, there's just like a mass ban of those accounts. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there any, do you want to know any more about cheating?
No, I mean, you know more about this than I
Yeah.
do. So,
So yeah, there's. I would say it doesn't really pay off because we remove those accounts fairly quickly and fairly frequently. Kaysen on Reddit says, "What are your thoughts around balancing for the sake of balance versus what's fun on fun to play against?"
So, like I said at the very start, fun is the key important thing, right? I mean, that's the point of the game.
Yeah.
Going down that slightly, the purpose of balance is so that you can have fun with all of the different playstyles. And that's why, like, we generally don't say like, oh, everything needs to be 50% pick rate, because that's not the point. The point is so that when you boot up and you boot up into a match, you have all of these options available to you, and whichever one you choose, as long as you execute it on it well, you have a good chance of victory, right? We don't want to give you options where it's like, oh, if you go for this, you're just going to lose, or like your chances of winning, or you're shooting yourself in the foot, basically, right? We don't want that to be a consideration. We want you to care about, hey, what's the most fun way I enjoy winning, or like, competing, and that's the important thing. So we try not to get too deep into the, balance for the sake of balance. It's definitely not that easy or that obvious of like, well, that's just not that fun, right? Like, and there's also a difference between playstyles that are fun for someone to play versus playstyles for people to play against.
Yeah.
That's a big thing too, right? Like, I think Rangers are a good example of they don't feel that toxic or terrible to play as, but like playing against them can often feel really frustrating,
Yeah.
right? So that's something that we always spend a lot of time on. Like, I think there was a comment earlier on in the chat that was like, why build a cache, or why build the Opal Blitz truck rather than a cache? And we're very aware of this problem. In fact, this has been something we've discussed multiple times. So this is for Wehrmacht Breakthrough. For those who just joined, that, but like the problem is like making that economy mechanic feel really good is really hard, because one of the things that makes caches so strong is the fact that they scale by team mode. So in 4v4, if you build a cache, it's generating you 4 times the resources, because it gives everyone on your team that amount of resources. And we didn't put that on the Opal Blitz because we wanted it to be for just you, and it's just worse, right? And it often isn't worth it. However, on the same time, people really care about the idea of like, well, if I took the map and I held all the fuel points, my opponent shouldn't be able to spam out vehicles, right? So at the same time, we can't really design mechanics or make mechanics really strong where, hey, I didn't control any of the fuel, but I can still get fuel, right? In a lot of other RTS games, that's actually really important, being able to cheat out resources in that way to have like a meaningfully different economy. But in Co, that's just not something that people enjoy. So that's an example where we don't really do it, and we really struggle with it. Like, we're looking at that ability in particular quite a lot. We want to make it better and play better, but there's so far no easy answer for that one.
Okay. Last one, and this is a bit of a fun one.
Sure.
This is from Junk Mail. Great username. Junk Mail on Discord. What's a balance change which was implemented and tested but didn't make it to the live game for one reason or another?
Oh, so many examples. But I think one that comes to mind and that the closed community got to play was so for Riflemen. Right now, one of their vet abilities, the second one, is essentially just a sprint. That was never the intention. The design of Riflemen was kind of like their 2 vet abilities kind of was to break the doctrine of fire and maneuver into 2 parts, right? You have Port on them, which was the fire component, and then it used to be, I believe it used to be called cover to cover, which was the maneuver component.
Yeah.
And the idea was that you would shoot them from afar with a rifleman, and then you would assault it by flanking it. Essentially, the way the World War II manual did it. Now, we wanted the sprint to be less generic because the sprint is very flexible. You can use it in every situation. So we wanted to reduce the power of the sprint by making, we created an ability called Grenade Rush. Essentially, it's the ability that the Canadians have now. But when you throw a grenade, or when you go to throw a grenade, we went through some iterations, the rifleman would get stronger and faster. So it was a conditional sprint to make essentially that idea of like you fire with the rifleman and suppress them, and then you would assault them with grenades using the other ability. That's how you would have a 1-2 team with the rifleman. However, in practice, that ability ran into a bajillion issues. Not the easiest one being that you don't always have grenades. You have to tech grenades. So the idea of like getting a second vet ability that didn't do anything until you got a grenade ability really sucks.
Yeah.
Like the Canadians don't have this problem because they have the Gammon Bomb
Yep.
organic on them. But like, so we went through the closed test. It was actually fairly close to actually going out, but then all of our feedback was with players was like, no, we don't like this. This kind of sucks.
Yeah, so those were the private testing that we were doing with players. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just were like, you know what? We removed it, and that was a sizable chunk of time, going from like thinking about how we make the sprint better to making the ability to play testing with the ability, and at the end we just took it out. So yeah.
Okay. Any others that come to mind of like things that might have been a little too spicy that we took out?
The Jaeger changes that we had this patch, there was a larger part to them. Oh, and this is actually relevant to the hotfix. They're all coming to me in pieces.
Yeah.
But Jaegers are getting a slight combat bonus when with the G43s. They're gonna do from 16. I'm not gonna say the numbers. They're gonna do 2 more damage per hit. And also their veterancy at both Vet 1 and Vet 2 are getting a slight numerical increase. So originally, when for 2-1, we had a larger suite of changes for the Jaegers. The veterancy changes was one of those. But in our playtesting, it was really unclear whether or not they would be too strong or too weak. And for reference, we were mostly playtesting 1v1, 2v2s.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to test proper 4v4s internally. But then we at the very like kind of towards the final stretch, we were like, there's a potential where like we just bring back Jaeger spam, because the whole point was to make Jaegers more strong as an individual unit that you could use to do a job, and rely less on building 3, 4, 5 of them and then like running at the enemy. And we were like, well, if we did these changes, there's a chance this just comes back, right? So we pulled those out at the last minute, and I think we regretted it. So we put it back in the hotfix. So yeah.
Cool. Any other questions there, Hannah?
We have a bunch. I don't know that we have time to get to them all. Fancy Josh does ask in chat, I have a question. If you'll have time at the end, I'd love to know how we as a community can help beyond complaining.
I have thoughts on that one, but I'll throw it to you first.
No, you go ahead.
No, I think like the best way to help with the multiplayer balance process is probably just to, keep leaving feedback, wherever you want to leave it, whether it's, Steam, Discord, Reddit, social, whatever the case may be. What I would say is the most helpful thing is not necessarily saying like something is broken or something is overpowered or something is too weak, but sort of trying to pick out like the problem that it creates. Like sort of, again, maybe a unit is too, a unit's at, I'm like grasping at words here, but like, let's say like a machine gun is too strong.
Mm-hmm.
That's never happened in our game. But let's say a machine gun is too strong. What I think would be helpful is identifying like the key scenarios in which it is too powerful, right? Like this is too strong in 2v2s, or this is too strong in team games. And then following that up with maybe some suggested changes, like, maybe we just reduce the damage it does, or maybe, reduce its accuracy. But again, I think through that, you're trying to figure out like the problem that it creates. Like, this is too punishing against the British, or this is too punishing with, massed infantry, or whatever the case may be. So sort of trying to, instead of like focusing on like the individual unit or the individual like weapon or problem that you're trying to identify, try and like pull that camera lens out a little bit and sort of identify like, how is this impacting the overall game? Anyway, that's just my thought.
Yeah.
I'll throw it over to someone who knows what they're talking about.
I mean, I think those were good points. I honestly think just keep playing, just enjoy the game, be a player, have fun. And then if you have thoughts, just put them up on forums, put them up, because I mean, we're gonna look at it. There's no real easy way to go from A to B. Even ourselves as players, like we're players too, like we play co, right? And we have to be very careful with what we do in terms of, going from, oh, we played one game or we played a few games and we get this impression, versus, what actually is, right? We have to validate. And that's why stats is important. We validate it via stats, right? And then we also sanity check of like, oh, I think this is really strong. And then what does the community think? So in general, good balance never comes from one single person.
Mhm.
The whole point is that it comes from a lot of sources, from a lot of people coming together. So I wouldn't worry too much about it individually. Yeah.
Okay, Hannah, I think we have maybe time for one more.
This, we'll see if you can answer this. Any sneak peeks for the full patch?
No.
That might be it then.
That one's the fall patch.
Yeah, so like battle groups.
Yeah,
2-2.
that's far out.
Yeah, that's a little bit far out, so I don't think we can really give any specifics right now. Obviously, 4 new battle groups, new maps? Question mark? Yeah, new maps. We promised that already. I'm gonna have to go look
You
at
can
the
tell this
roadmaps
is.
to make sure
You
we
can
promised
just
it.
tell how live this.
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think there be the usual adjustments and improvements, and I'm sure you're working on multiplayer balance as well to
Yes.
coincide with the battle group release.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll obviously have more news as we get closer to the release date for update 2.2, whose name I know, but I'm not telling. Yeah, and I think that's going to be it. So, Jason, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I think this was great. It's great to hear your thoughts on everything that you do and why you do the things that you do. So, folks, as always, if you want to keep up to date on all of the latest Company of Heroes stuff, be sure to follow us on your social platform of choice at Company of Heroes. Join the Discord, discord.gg/Relic Entertainment, and stay tuned for Hotfix 212. 212.
Yes.
Probably in the next couple of days here. Patch notes will go out shortly before that goes up or at the same time. But I think that will kind of be it for today. Am I forgetting anything? I don't have my prompt in front of me, so I think that's it.
We never have prompts. What are you
Yeah,
talking
but
about?
I have the prompt. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Okay.
This was great. We'll do it again. Thanks so much, folks, and we will see you next time.